All right. Welcome everyone to this Millburn School District 24 Board of Education Community of the Whole meeting on May 9th. Can we have roll call, please?
Ms. Boss? Present. Mr. Coleman?
Present.
Mr. Lorenzen?
Present.
Mr. Murphy?
Here.
Mr. Pederini?
Here.
Ms. Roberts?
We stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments?
No public comments.
Does anyone have any additions? Okay. Information and discussion. First reading of board policies. Ms. Boss, Mr. Coleman, do we have any?
You know, I looked through them. I didn't see anything that was, you know, jumped out at me. I will say that they just continue to get more and more and more detailed, and they're all bolstered by law. So last year, I think it was 85 policies, I believe, were revised last year in November. So getting through them is a challenge. It's just they keep getting more and more complicated.
Agreed. Nature of life, I guess. All right. Cottonwood Estates impact fees.
Yeah, just as a informational item for the next meeting, we'll have this on the agenda for approval. Basically, once a year we increase the impact fee by the CPI in this case. This is what this agreement is based on. And this is basically something I think we've done it's a very small subdivision. But in order to keep it valid, then we need to do this once a year and submit this document to the county so that if there is a home that's going to be built there, that we'll get the impact fees at the correct amount.
So there's 2 homes there right now, you said?
I think, Jason, am I correct? Are there 2 or 3? I mean, it's
not
really
many, no.
Yeah.
It's off of Miller Road and Beck, I believe.
Anyone have questions on this? Increase of up to 1.1 FTE for 2022-23 school year.
Okay, we've been talking a little bit about staffing for next year and what our needs are, and we every year we are moving staff around to fill student needs and balance class sizes, or if we're adding a program or eliminating a program. There's always shifts that happen. After those shifts this year, we are looking to add 1.1 FTE, and what we will be able to do with that is add another day of PE at the elementary school, and add a social work position at the middle school for support. So I know that sounds like we're adding 2, but it's because we were able to reduce in other positions that we're only going up 1.1. The 0.1 is a request to meet the needs of our adaptive PE. Adaptive PE is for students who may have some ambulatory issues and in their IEPs have adapted PE. That's a special education PE program that's specialized for them. And so our adaptive PE teacher's caseload is increasing, and so we're trying to move her from 0.5 to 0.6. That would give her 3 full days a week.
Another district, or she?
Yes, I believe she works in another district as well.
Okay. questions? No? Increased salary range for head of building and grounds.
So, Carly and I have been interviewing buildings and grounds candidates, and, we'd like to increase the salary range to get closer to market. We're pretty low for that position in our area, even for our size of school and in this area. And, so we recognize that, but in order to get someone with the skill set that we would like to have with experience in fixing HVAC, for example, and being able to repair some of that on site versus calling for service, and have more in-house ability to do some repairs, we think we can save money on that, looking through all of our bills, and that's what. So we would like to increase that by about $20,000 up to $80,000. And that's gonna depend on range of experience and abilities, skill sets.
It listed on the job, just like, on the job description that you put out?
Yeah.
The range, so you'll update it with the higher range then?
Oh, on the advertisement?
Yeah,
No, we haven't, we won't need to, it wasn't on the original.
okay,
No. Just the 3-4 people that we're talking to still,
Mhm.
that's what it will take to
to get one of them, okay.
to get one of them. We've got qualified candidates, which was great. But when we're talking about bringing in someone from the trades, if they're actively working, they're making what their overtime, they're making 80 to 100,000 already. So what would attract them to us is more of a little bit more stability. They want some experience working indoors, one location, perhaps instead of driving various locations, and health insurance. That's the big differentiating.
Oh,
Some places have health insurance, but ours is really good, so
does that role do a lot of overtime?
what's that?
Has that role done overtime a lot in the past, or is it just strictly salary?
We did do overtime when we paid hourly a few years back, and then we switched it to a salary.
Okay.
And then if we don't want to take advantage of that, so if they're work plowing all weekend, we would give them the next days off,
Okay,
some exchange time
okay. Like a
Or
comp time kind of
comp
thing?
time.
Okay, yeah.
versus paying overtime.
Mhm.
If they're working an extra half an hour, 45 minutes here and there, that's
Part of it,
just
yeah.
part of the job.
Yeah.
Okay. District accomplishments.
Okay, so I've been including in our board packet some of the activities that we've been doing this year, and as you can see, we've been extremely busy working on curriculum and getting what's called priority standards. So we follow the state standards at Milburn, where we would take the state standards and then identify, because the state, if we taught everything that's in them, we would probably have to extend the school year by about 20 days. So we're trying to shorten them up each year and prioritize what's most important to us. During COVID, we worked with the Regional Office of Education to shorten them up even more for reading and math, just to focus on what we absolutely had to get done with the kids in order for them to be prepared for the next level. And we're expanding away from that again now, since we had a full year of school in school, which was lovely. That was one of our main goals this year. And we did accomplish that, so that's exciting, and hopefully next year will be even better with that. But we've been working on our overall goals of becoming a professional learning communities district. Professional learning communities is a structure for continuous improvement, and it's a formal structure for continuous improvement, and so we've been moving toward that model that's been in place for a very long time in this area and across the country. It's proven to show success. So that's not, if you're in education, that's something that everybody's heard of, the PLCs. If you're not in education, it's not, but that's just a continuous learning model we are trying to implement here at Milburn. And we started that a couple of years ago after our last strategic planning, where we looked at our district and said, what is it gonna take to get us to that next level? And what are some of the structures that are missing? And that was one way that we looked at, or one of the strategies and models that we looked at for moving forward and being able to maximize our capacity as a district. There's all kinds of pieces to the PLC, so the basic questions are, what is it that we want students to learn? That's our standards and our goals and criteria each year that we want them to learn. What is it we want them to learn? Then the next question is, how do we know if they learned it? Seems pretty simple, but that can be a tricky question. How do you measure if kids know what they say or what we think they know? And then what do we do if they don't learn? And that's where support resources come into play, of supporting the kids to get them up to those standards of where they need to be. And then the fourth question of the main questions is, what if they already know? So if we have kids who are coming into second grade that are already accomplishing second grade material in either math or reading, what are we gonna do with those kids to enhance and challenge them from where they're at? So it's really focused on taking kids where they're at and moving them forward and knowing exactly what kids need to know and be able to do. Sounds simple, but it's very complicated and it's a long work. But we've been working on some of those structures to put in place in order to get us to that. So this is a 5-year process. Usually any implementation of any sort is a 5-year process, 5 to 7 years. And so we are taking the long-term view, but we're doing those building blocks like priority standards. What do we want kids to know and be able to do at each grade level? And we're doing that and focused on reading and math this year. At the middle school, they've done a little bit more work in their departments, because they're more departmentalized. So that social studies they're not focused on math, for example, so they don't have to worry about math as much, but they're focused on what do they want the social studies standards to be at their level, and then creating some assessments to measure, okay, how do we know if kids know?
The only thing that, like, alarm bell that goes off in my mind when I hear that is, like, I don't want to see us starting to track kids at second grade and be like, oh, you're at the 3rd tier green math, and now for now you're gonna have to be good at math, and you will always be considered poor at math. So I'm sure not that you would do that, but it just, that's what my mind kind of like thinks, oh, again, I'm sure that's what you're keeping in mind. It just seems like so much pressure and so much labeling of kids that,
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think we always have to combat that, because that can be a trap.
Yeah.
To label kids. What I like about our reading program currently and math is that we take the kids, no matter where they're at, we try not to pigeonhole them for this is where you're going to stay. We don't level them, especially in reading. But they do that IRLA assessment. I don't know if you've seen the results of that or remember that. It's independent reading level assessment. So it shows us what each child knows, what they're able to do, and what the next steps are for how they need to progress through their reading. So if they need to focus on decoding, we know that child needs to focus on decoding.
So you're just almost thinking about how to best maximize the data that you're getting?
Yeah.
Okay.
And from that, there's the reality of school. We group kids who, if there's 3 or 4 kids who need to work on that skill, we're going to provide that instruction in groups and moving forward, of course.
Title I requires that.
Yeah.
So, does require it. Do they have a clear definition of what they identify as educationally disadvantaged or deprived? We can even see that in the policy around Title I.
I don't,
Yeah, I'm not asking you, I'm just asking as.
Is there something
Yeah,
out there?
is there,
That's a fair question.
is there a common reference that schools can then look at and determine, okay, this person is or is not educationally disadvantaged or deprived, and that's just using their terms.
Other than social economic status would be the main determinant for
Yeah,
us.
well, that's what we see, right? But that doesn't mean that that person is educationally disadvantaged.
Not necessarily.
So that's, when you talk about labeling and putting kids in the
Mhm.
track, the law is saying that you have to identify who is educationally disadvantaged and or deprived.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be that you were saying they're functioning lower, you would just say, let's make sure we're attending to the increased needs, right? Cause I don't think you wouldn't place a kid based on those demographics, but you would just maybe make sure that you're spending extra attention.
That's
Yeah,
my
yeah,
question.
To get the
yeah.
support.
That's my question.
Yeah.
Right.
Is there a definition provided by the state here that says this is educationally disadvantaged, this is deprived? We
Like
commonly
below.
Oh, I
think
see what
that.
you're saying,
So,
yeah,
right,
yeah,
so how
yeah,
do you even approach that?
yeah.
How did the policy that's provided, again, I wouldn't say it jumped out at me because a lot of these things that the terms are ambiguous. And they do so to give latitude, of course, in some cases, and others just to provide a catch-all. But I would think it requires, the policy requires that the districts address this and do everything they can to ensure that. But I haven't seen what educationally disadvantaged is. What does that mean? Someone who's performing low, below standards, is it quantifiable,
Yeah, is it outcome?
right? Because, I mean,
Mhm.
the first thing we go to is socioeconomic status. This is typically what we look at
Mhm.
and say, well, if there's a poor district, this is what, equity, or the equity-based funding model is based on. If there's a district who doesn't have the resources, we have to bring that up to speed. So are the children within that district, are they educationally disadvantaged or deprived? And if so, what does that look like there? So I'll continue to search because, just reviewing the policies made me start a search to see, okay, what is that?
Yeah, I think what would get away from that, having to put labels on kids, is just taking kids wherever they're at and growing them forward in
Mhm.
that individualized instruction. So making sure no kids fall through the cracks. Of course, we want to look at, are there certain groups of children that have a tendency to underperform over time? Compared to other districts, we can look at that, and we have. For example, the last time I had data available was 2019 to look at. Our largest underperforming group was white males in ELA. In math, the performance was very close. And I'm not talking about within our district. That's not unusual to have males underperform females in ELA, but below the state average, the gap between the state average and Milburn was
Right.
more significant than in any other group that was identifiable.
So does that mean they're educationally disadvantaged or
No.
deprived? It doesn't, right?
No.
So that's difficult.
Right.
That's difficult. I would think they would want to define what that
Right.
is. Because if it's socioeconomic status, there are 24, 25 nations that perform better than the United States in reading and math. Most of those do not live to our standards, much lower than our standards.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting to look at when you peel off demographics and start to analyze different trends.
Yeah. Okay.
future agenda items. District consolidation plan, what's that?
That's our, we used to have a title, you have to, in the past, apply for Title I, Title II, Title
Oh,
IV,
right, okay.
all separately. Now it's a consolidated plan.
Okay.
That's only part of it, then you still have to go into the detail for each
For
of them.
each
They
one.
just made more work.
It was part of, it's part of the state's idea of how to improve efficiency.
Well, they're kind of looking at you using the resources of all your federal grants toward a primary goal for your district. Kind of being able to focus, and then how can we use these other monies to achieve those outcomes, but just made it a lot harder.
Okay. Let's see, district treasurer, school lunch fees, grants, food service bid, board policies, board vacancies. Superintendent evaluation, so remember, in June, we're gonna have some talk about that, and the basis of his evaluation that we really work on is the district's strategic plan. That's in the drive that was created a couple years back. So, make sure we review that. Superintendent's report.
Okay, pretty excited about our Educator for the Year representation at Lake County. We had 5 educators that were represented at Lake County for Educator of the Year, nominated from Milburn. We had Ben in the category of administration, and Carol in the category of middle school teacher. And Carol was named, of all the schools, Educator of the Year for Lake County for middle schools. So very excited. Fun night. We also had Anna Vivian, who's our middle school special ed teacher. She was in the special education educators category. And we had Mary Pershey was representative of the primary grades, and Nurse Kelly was representative of the support staff. So that was a fun night. We've had jazz band concerts a couple weeks ago. It was awesome. Good to see them back and rolling. We've got some real good talent in our district, and that was fun to watch. And then band concert was last week, and choir will be next week. So lots of good things happening. Lots of performances. Our track team has sectionals on Saturday, so we'll see how many kids go down state from there. Usually we have a good representation from our section, so we'll see how that works. Last year there was no state track meet, nor the year before, so it's been a while since we've had that opportunity.
Where are the sectionals held?
Johnsburg High School.
Business office report.
Not a whole lot this time. Wanna pull it up, Jason? I am glad we went ahead and had them come roto-root the rest of the sewer, because we had a huge root ball in there, or not root ball, but basically a huge amount of roots that they pulled out.
Like an alligator.
But they didn't find any breaks in the pipes or anything that would have been a problem that would need to be repaired. It's just all the little, where everything goes together, those tree roots just managed to get in. So, and I don't think well, I know it hasn't been cleaned out since I've been here, but I doubt if it's been cleaned out since the new addition was built. So they were able to find that. We also were able to clear a blockage at the detention pond at the middle school, because we had, the water just kept getting higher and higher, and there was an issue there as well. And then I think there was one other thing, just information about Cottonwood Estates, and Carly and I were at the Illinois Association of School Business Official Conference last week in Schaumburg, so lots of information there to share in the future.
Thank you.
Did they shed any light on this, the root stuff? I mean, potentially,
No, nothing, when they ran the camera through, they said there's really nothing you need to do as far as any repairs or
yeah,
anything. Maybe in another 20 years you'll have to do it again.
yeah.
Let's hope the rest of
It's a lot of roots.
Yeah, and they'd already pulled them out 2 other times from a different section. Because we had, there was one area of the building that had a blockage, and then less than a month later had another blockage. And they pulled roots out both times, so that's when we decided we probably should do all that external area, the sewer line, to see if there was anything else in there blocking it.
Board reports? I know, my boys and Mr. Jorgensen, Mr. Lynn's boys, I think, all went to the jazz dinner, as alumni. Encouraged the kids to, continue in band and jazz at their high schools. They were very excited. Very excited. Said the bass player or guitar player was awesome, but unfortunately he's going to a different high school. But they were very excited. Said, I think there was an oh wow on the drum player.
Yeah, they're very good percussionists.
So, some great musicians as usual. All right. Any other board reports? I make a motion to adjourn to close meetings for 1 and 2, right?
Yeah.
The appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, specific individuals who serve as independent contractors in a park, recreational, or educational setting, or specific volunteers of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee, a specific individual who serves as an independent contractor in a park, recreational, or educational setting, or a volunteer of the public body, or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. However, a meeting to consider an increase in compensation to a specific employee of a public body that is subject to the Local Government Wage Increase Transparency Act may not be closed and shall be open to the public and posted and held in accordance with this act, as well as collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees.
So moved.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Boss?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Lorenzen?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Mr. Federini?
Yes.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Okay, we'll move into closed session. We will come back into, our special meeting after this, because we have some items to vote on and to approve. It will probably be a rather lengthy closed session, so I'm guessing around an hour.
We'll record the other one? Or
We will record the other one, so to watch the other one, we will open it up to record again on the website, but we have to close that recording down clearly for the closed session.